Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I did get a couple of emails from people that had to drop out of the class for different reasons, and I'm really happy that they emailed me so I didn't feel like I ran them all off, because I can do that sometimes. Okay, welcome back. I'm Sandy Carlson. It is November 28th, isn't it? Wow, the 28th. And this is session 4 of Buddhism in a nutshell. And we don't have any new people here. Everybody's been here, okay. So before we get started, let's take a moment to settle our minds from the busyness of the day. In this class, we've learned several meditations: scanning the body, bare attention, counting the breaths. I think last time we ended with mind like the sky, right? Let's maybe start with, let's start with mind like the ocean, and then I'm going to give you guys a choice a little bit later on, am I like super loud, or is that just me? For some reason I feel super loud. Better? Is that better? Yeah, that just felt just super loud. And I'm a loud person anyway, so if I had to think about it, I don't want to be shouting at you. I'm going to give you guys an option later, depending on how we're doing with the class and kind of where we are, that maybe at the end of class tonight, we'll try to end a little bit early and maybe do an analytical meditation. I've been talking about these different kinds. You guys are all, really engaged with that. Normally I save the analytical for the 5th class, but I think maybe we'll do it at the end of this class, because that will give us a little bit more time potentially to talk about it. And then that will give us a little bit of the extra time, because the last class tends to get really involved, because we're going to be talking about the wisdom of emptiness, and that is a big subject to have 45 minutes to talk about. So again, I'll let you guys have the choice a little bit later, if we want to just kind of keep rolling through the PowerPoint and the discussion that way, or if we want to try an analytical meditation. But to start off, let's start with this meditation called Mind Like the Ocean. This is actually one of my favorites. We'll talk about it after we do it, and see where you guys are at. So we're going to start with settle into your 7-point meditation posture. And remember that the point is to be in a position that's comfortable and can be sustained for a long period of time. And that allows you to focus your mind on the meditation. And it's more important to be comfortable than sitting in a perfect position. And keep that in mind as you work on your posture and your legs and arms, hands, back, eyes, mouth, jaw, tongue, neck, and head. So we call that 7-point meditation posture. And there's actually many lamas, including Pabanka Rinpoche. If you stick with some of this, you'll start recognizing some of these different names. He wrote The Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and he actually talks about an 8th feature of the posture, which is the breath. It's breathing. And it's good to begin to start to be aware of your breathing after you kind of settle into your posture and start to quiet your mind and let go of distracting thoughts. And remember that any action of your body, speech, and mind done with a mind that has negative emotions is non-virtuous. Actions done with the mind full of love and compassion are virtuous. So the mind that you have now helps you determine the result of your meditation. Let's create an altruistic motivation for this meditation session. We'll think that we're meditating not just for our own individual benefit, but we're taking the time now to meditate, develop our minds, to become wiser and kinder people, able to be of benefit to all beings. That is really a Mahayana, that's a bodhicitta motivation. We're not just meditating for ourselves, but we're meditating to be of benefit to others. And even though that may feel a little funny, thinking about it that way, just go with it. So start by practicing bare attention, just breathing. When you gain a deeper level of concentration and focus, just loosen that concentration slightly and start to emphasize the element of mindfulness in your meditation a little bit more strongly. Allow your mind to be attentive and observant of whatever comes to notice, regardless of what it is. Don't identify with these mental elements that are arising. Simply observe them like a tourist. Allow them to arise as you observe them and pass away without getting involved. Just be aware. Allow your mindful attention to expand, to encompass your entire sphere of experience, of consciousness. Forget that there's an observer and something being observed. Simply imagine your experience, your consciousness, as being just like the sky, completely clear, vast, spacious, without end. Concentrate on this experience and identify with this experience. Calm, clear, spacious awareness. Now, the mind can also be likened to an ocean, and the thoughts and other mental events are like fish swimming through that clear, spacious medium. We are ordinarily unaware of the nature of the mind, and instead we only observe the fish-like thoughts. It's as though we're observing an aquarium through a large glass wall, and at first we only notice the fish. If someone were to tell us to observe the clear water in which the fish were swimming, we might at first have difficulty even noticing it because of its transparency. But by simply realizing that the fish could not be swimming unless there was some substance to swim in, we can take our attention away from observing the fish and focus instead on the clear water. In a similar fashion, we let go of paying attention to our fish-like thoughts, and instead we step back and recognize the clear, light nature of our mind, within which all of our thoughts and other mental events occur. So if we identify with our minds like an ocean with that clear spaciousness, in our ordinary state of mind, as we go about our business every day, having conversations and planning, thinking, worrying, making lists and so on, it's as if we're living on the surface of that ocean. All those thoughts and feelings and ideas seem to fill our minds, making lots of waves, lots of turbulence and agitation. But as we identify more and more with our ocean-like mind and let go of the wave-like emotions and fish-like thoughts, it's as if we start to descend to the quiet depths of that ocean-like mind. We reach a state of mind that is more peaceful, still, free of agitation and disturbance. In the case of the aquarium, we continue to see the fish swimming in front of us as we focus on the water. However, when we focus our attention on the clear, light nature of the mind, our thoughts will begin to diminish in intensity and frequency, thereby quieting the mind and enhancing our ability to concentrate. Whenever we identify with and are carried away uncontrollably by a thought or a feeling, we lose any awareness of that spacious clarity of our mind. of the vast, clear, and knowing nature of the mind within each thought or feeling that occurs. Our perspective becomes small and constricted. It's as if all there are the waves and we've lost the ocean. We lose that open, quiet spaciousness. When we can simply observe those thoughts and feelings arising without getting involved, when we can identify with the ocean instead of the fish and the waves, then we can reside in that spacious purity of our basic clarity of mind. Calm, clear, peaceful spaciousness. Without agitation, without delusions, without anxiety and distress, without dissatisfaction and attachments and aversions. Slowly bring your attention back to the room, and let's dedicate all the positive energy that we created through the practice of mindful meditation to becoming a better and better person who's more at peace in life and who therefore can bring more peace and well-being to others in every moment of every day. Is anybody trying these meditations at home? Did you guys find them online? Is anybody trying this at home? Any thoughts about that? Anybody willing to share? I particularly like the mind like the ocean. For some reason, that worked very well for me. I still remember the first time I actually did it many, many years ago. That one just worked for me. So are people trying this? Are you finding some things working better than others? Any thoughts on that? Chris, do we have the mic?
Actually, I do meditation almost every day, but the majority is not things like sky or like ocean. It's more like we can Zen meditation.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the other type. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another type, and they're all
Yeah.
good. Again, these are all, that's the whole point of this. Find what works for you and your mind.
Yeah. Because for myself, because when I get home, I'm really tired, so I think the Zen practice is getting more.
It works for you.
Relaxed.
Yeah, very much so. Are you? Let's see, Thich Nhat Hanh. Is he's not Zen, or is he? I love his meditations too.
You mean?
I'm trying to think of some of these different teachers because it's interesting to read about different teachers. I do tend to stay very focused on the Tibetan Buddhism, but there are others that I'm very attracted to as well. And I think it's good to be aware.
In China, we have a lot of type of the meditation practice by different religions, and even sometimes even it's not a religion, but still they have a lot of methods to practice meditation, especially like qigong. Yeah,
I love qigong. Yes.
Qigong.
Yeah.
They practice meditation a lot.
Yes. I have a friend back in northern Minnesota who was a practitioner, and I can't remember his teacher's name, but he was very much into it. He showed me a few things. We did a few exercises one time that go along with it, because that's very much a physical as well as the mental. And I enjoyed that immensely.
Yeah.
And I obviously could use more of it. But anybody else trying it?
What was the website?
So, kadampa-center.org. Let me somebody check me later. Spiritual programs, introductory courses. Buddhism in a nutshell. So there's the website, and then follow these buttons. And you'll find this in all of the meditations that we have done are posted there. There's a few additional things that we haven't gotten to yet that will be up there, but it has all of the handouts that we use in this class are posted online there. And then it's also, you can go to the website, and where we have the recordings. Sometimes if you go there to the recordings, you can even like just put in the search thing, Buddhism in a nutshell, and you can find some of the other teachers, because I think it's very helpful to listen to different perspectives. We all lead classes a little bit differently, and there's several Buddhism in a nutshell class leaders that will just come at things from a different perspective sometimes, and I find that very helpful. You'll find the Sunday teachings and stuff there. There's a lot of really good teachings up there if you like to listen. I like to download things and listen to them while I'm driving, or when I'm even doing mindless things around the house. Sometimes it's just nice to have them. So there's a lot of resources on our website, and then not only on our website, you can follow that through to the fpmt.org, and that's we're affiliated with that organization. They have a lot of resources, and a lot of the things that we do here come from them. A lot of the class layouts and Discovering Buddhism, Meditation 101, these are all courses that are offered through them that we do here. So you can kind of follow that through. Like, for instance, the Discovering Buddhism on the FPMT is an online class that you can pay for and take, and that way you can do like the, at your own pace type of thing. Here we have it, and it's a 2-year program that's offered on Monday nights that you can go through that have all the different modules. But if you want to just go through a lot faster, you pay for it, but that's worth it too. I've actually done that as well. So then you have access to all of it. So you can even find some of the things up there on YouTube. Richard Gere, who was talking about Richard Gere earlier? So Richard Gere, so we had a big discussion before you guys came, and we should probably repeat some of that stuff. If you actually Google it on YouTube, he gives an introduction to the Discovering Buddhism classes. So you can Google Richard Gere, Discovering Buddhism, and he'll pop up. Okay. Any questions about anything that we've talked about in class so far? You guys have been a very quiet class. You only talk in classes hasn't started yet or at the end. Otherwise, it's just you guys just don't. Any questions about anything? We had people that were asking different things about what was on the altar and stuff like that. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes if you have any questions and are just curious at any time. Okay, feel free to ask me, because this is where it's comfortable. This is where, you come into this new place. Some people have never been to a Buddhist center, and you have questions, and it's okay. We're going to create a safe place. You can ask me, you can ask Steve, you can ask Chris, you can ask Brian. Okay, we've all been here for a long time, so feel free to ask. We're all open. This is kind of that safe place. And I know you're probably not going to do it during class. Yes?
I wonder if anybody teach the Tibet book of death.
Anybody teaching Tibet?
Tibet book of death.
Oh, the Book of Death? Okay, so the actual Tibetan Book of the Dead, okay? There are different classes. So we're actually going to get to some of this in this class today, because we are going to talk about the death and dying. Our plan tonight, what's our plan tonight? Let's see if I have this on. We'll do a review of karma. We're going to talk about precious human rebirth. We are going to talk about the Buddhist view of death. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but there is an entire book that he's talking about, the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, that we don't have like classes on just that, okay? But we do have classes that encompass that. Robbie Watkins' class, Mind and Its Potential, goes into a little bit more details of some of the death and dying process. We're going to talk about it a little bit in this class. And again, we kind of just have to skate over the top of things because this is Buddhism in a nutshell. So it's kind of this light thing. But in some of the classes, we do go in further, and we'll talk more about it at this class. But there's a really interesting book. And again, let's wait until we get to that part of this. I love that you guys are kind of foreshadowing some of the stuff. So that means you are actually listening and engaged. I love that part. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. But there's a whole book. Anybody see that movie, Jacob's Ladder? So there's some people that say that that's got some of the Tibetan Book of the Dead in there. I don't know if you guys have ever thought about that. Go check out. There's all kinds of movies out there that are slightly have overtones. And I had read that one at one time. So we're going to review karma, precious human rebirth, the Buddhist view of death. We're going to talk about the 3 scopes. And we're going to go a little bit more into the principal aspects of the path, which is that 4th noble truth. We're going to break this down. All this stuff starts to weave a little bit, and you start to see it. We'll go into renunciation a little bit more, bodhicitta a little bit, and the wisdom of emptiness. And we're going to take that last class, our 5th class, because we only have one more class after this. Our 5th class, we're going to be talking about the wisdom of emptiness, because that alone is such a huge topic to try to get people to understand. So we're going to take a lot of time next week and talk about that 3rd aspect of the path. And again, Tibetan Buddhism, it likes the lists. We've got the 8 of these, 6 of these, 4 of these. So those 3 are really critically important to everything that we do here. So I'm going to kind of start winging through some of this stuff because it's part of the review. And part of it, I think it's just important that you hear it more than just that one time that we go through it. And I know I miss things when we start. So I'm going to wing through. Stop me if you have questions. And let's just get through some of this stuff so that we can get to some of this, the Buddhist view on death and some of those other things that you're asking about. So remembering that everything has a cause, and because the mind is non-physical, it can only be produced by something non-physical. I'm going to go into some of these real quick, because we already did this, right? Each moment of mind, y'all kind of got that part. If I see nods, I'm going to keep going. If I see blank faces, I may stop and talk more. So come on, react back. Mind moments. Remember this one? The 65 mind moments in every snap of your fingers. You can kind of follow this back a little bit when we just talk about some of those gross memories that we have. But just think about all these things that you're really not aware of that we actually do all day long. You know, you're sitting here with your legs tapping right there. You're probably not even thinking about it, are you? Okay? You're writing notes. You're not even thinking about what's going on down here, are you? It just happens. These things just happen. But you know what? Someplace in your mind, that signal is saying, I need to write this down. I'm going to form the letter like this. So these things that we're not even aware of. Do you remember back in the day, typing class, when you first started to learn how to type, there was no way you were going to get those letters down. And all of a sudden now you can just do it flawlessly. Okay? So it's kind of that type of thing, these things that we become familiar with and learn, but you're not even aware of what your mind is doing probably, 90% of the time. We just have this much going on as we're aware of. But our bodies are doing all of this, and our mind is controlling that. The body doesn't just do it. So we can break down those moments. And the more that we have the awareness of our minds, the more that we start to work with our minds, the more that we have the opportunity to practice with our minds. Okay, those are those mind moments, gross, subtle, and most subtle. Again, I'm just going to keep rolling until somebody says stop, otherwise. Okay, samsara, beginningless, recurring cycle of death and rebirth under the control of karma. That's what samsara means, cyclic existence. Karma means action, cause and effect. Positive actions produce happiness, negative actions produce suffering. This is where we get into some of that. When you think about it, it's really quite easy to talk about, hard to continually do. If we want to start working with our minds to just do positive actions. And this is a psychological process. There is no cosmic scoreboard out there. Everybody understands that? I got 3 nods. This is a big class. Sideways.
Talking about it, but I guess I don't understand that. So karma, in some part, involves when rebirth involves sort of placement.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Sorry. So karma.
Let's go here.
What I have heard, I guess, and I don't know how close to right this is, that karma, the karma that you gather or what you do in one life will lead to the placement sort of where you are in the next life and perhaps in coming lives. How is that? So where is that being kept, and how does that transference happen?
So it's all your mental. It's all with that writing on that little subtle mind. Okay, the most subtle. So karma is like this. I've got to be careful with my words because it's so easy that somebody's going to say, "Oh, Sandy said karma is this and this." So imagine that most subtle mind is that little kernel of the mind, and karma kind of rides on it and helps to propel it. Okay? So the life that we're living now is the karmic result of what we did in the past. So if we think about this, the holder of our minds, okay, I mean, I'm just going to get real specific. The holder of Sandy's mind in the past had to have been, Geshe-la talks about this, had to have been an incredibly generous person, because look at where I'm living. Okay, I'm living in a place that I have access to clean water. I have access to air conditioning and heat. I've got access to food, easily food. I've got access to, I'm sitting in Kadampa Center. I'm leading a class on Buddhism. Imagine what this mind had to have done to put me here. And I'm grateful for it. And I don't want to muck it up. And I think of myself as the mind, bearer, that whole environmental thing we talked about, that we've got to, take care of the earth for our children. Well, I've got to take care of this mind for that next person, for that next being, I should say. Okay? Right. So think about everything, the life that we're living now. I can look at this life that I'm living now, and I can start to think about what the bearer of this mind had to have done in the past. Now, not everything's rosy. I'm a cancer survivor. Okay, I just recently went through a whole bunch of more medical stuff. Just fine, no worries, just annoying medical stuff. Okay, so I still have negative karmic seeds ripening. But yes, the life that we live now is the result of whoever held our minds before. The life that we live now and the things that we do now with our body, speech, and mind are going to affect our minds in the future. Whoever's carrying this mind in the future. So this is what we're talking about. The ripening result. These are the aspects of karma. So what type of rebirth do we have? What type of environment are we born into? What type of experiences are we going to have? And creating the cause similar to the cause, okay? Creating the result similar to the cause. So our habit energy. Okay? So these habits, we have good habits and we have bad habits. So this habit energy is also part of it. And we have to fight this. Some things we want to, you can think about what habits that you have. We all have habits. Okay? How do we react to things? Okay? So sometimes that habit energy that we have that we're too quick with, impatience and a few other things, that's all habit energy, right? We can change it. This is some of the things we talked about earlier, too. Scientifically, it's now being proven that the neural pathways in our brain can be rewired. This is a physical scientific fact now. We're not talking, woo-woo, we're talking about things. This is a proven fact that with the neural pathways in our brains can be rewired physically, too. Is that kind of helping a little bit? Again, we are not going to understand this in the short time that we have. People study this for lifetimes. I'm working with this all the time. Just this past medical stuff that I was going through, I actually asked one of the guests, now what the heck did I do in a past life to cause this? Because I don't ever want to do it again. And they laughed. It's like, think about it. So it's just interesting. But again, we're working with our minds on this stuff. But these are the aspects of karma. If we go back, the laws of karma, okay? Now again, think about karma like we think about gravity. It is a natural law. It just is. Do you have a question?
Yes. Mind translates as spirit, or is a synonym of spirit or soul?
So the soul, the way that we think about, and you guys feel free to chime in, because I know that, do you want to take a swing at that one?
Well, it's an Atman, it's no Atman. So no, there is no soul, there is no spirit in Buddhism. There is no soul.
And why would that be? It's that clear. Did you want to say something, Brian?
It's the saying that it's that base where we're talking about the meditation where you're thinking of the clear sky and the clouds, and the clear sky is what's reborn, but the clouds are just thoughts. And I think that's so. Anything you think, any feeling you have is just a cloud in there, but it's not your mind. The mind is the base, is this clear, reflective, like knowing base. Well, the thoughts, so the idea, like thinking of this is mine, is a thought. That's another cloud. So anything, and I was going to mention that. Yeah, yeah, in that regards, in saying.
So there isn't a collective mind. So it's not like everybody has a piece of this collective mind. But the way to kind of think about this is that purest essence of, I'm going to call it Buddha nature for want of anything else right now. And why is it to me so amazingly empowering that this little kernel doesn't have a soul? When we think of a soul, I think of if Sandy was going to be reborn, right, which is kind of where you're going, that little essence of Sandy, that soul that you're talking about, Sandy has a lot of faults. Sandy is not a Buddha. She is not perfect. I have a lot of faults. So this purest form that gets to move forward doesn't have that. It's got all the karmic energy and things that are going to go, all this karma. But it's empowering to me to not have this baggage is a good word, okay? So because when you think of soul, we're really into the I at that point, okay? Which is the ego. So that has, again, it's more ego-driven. It's more this I base. This is about me, okay? And so we're taking the I, that universal I, out of this, and it is this pure mind, okay?
The
Now,
nature of that mind is the same for me as it is for somebody.
Yes.
It is for you.
and it is for that cockroach.
As for everything.
It is.
Right.
And again, we're talking that these are huge concepts that we are talking about in a class that we have, just this bit of time. So it's just starting to kind of just pull back the shade on it a little bit. Because again, you're not going to get this all in one class. Believe me, these are things we've been studying for years. I still have these glimmers of it, okay? And there'll be times when I feel like, oh, I'm there. I got it, okay? And then 3 days later, it's like, boy, I had that. I knew it. I've kind of lost it. So this. You're going to be studying this. If you step into this, you're going to be studying the same thing a lot. So you'll start to hear a lot of repetition, okay? And right about the time that you start thinking, oh, I know this, I'm talking about myself here very much so, oh, I got this. It's like, well, obviously not, because I'm still working on things. But it's again, don't try to understand and feel like you're not going to get this all in one class. We're just trying to pull back some layers for you.
Yeah. I have a question about the karma is a psychological thing as well.
Okay.
I feel like the karma cannot, like the fact that you got cancer, I think you don't only live your own karma. You live other people's karma as well. Like if someone else pollute the environment, and if you eat the polluted food, then your body will like be sick. So I think it's not only your psychological thing, that karma that is influencing you, but other people's karma is influencing you as well, right?
Not really, because you will never experience somebody else's karma. That's one of the natural laws. Now, we all seem to have a little bit of collective karma, right? So you kind of have to go with a little bit. We don't have a collective mind, but we do have collective karma. When you sit here and you think about that, we're all sitting in this room together. So each of our karmas brought this together. We're all seeing that same sunshine. We're all experiencing that same rain. So there is a little bit of what I would call maybe a collective karma. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay? Now,
But we all share.
yes.
The experience that's resulted in us being here.
Yeah. But now let's look at this.
We see this room differently. Each one of us has a different
Okay.
view of this room.
Yeah. So
Karmic. Because everything you see and think is karma.
the mic, because this is good stuff.
But what about the fact that you get sick because someone else may be polluted?
Well, but I had the karma. It was my karma that I got sick, right? It's my karma that I live in this environment. It's my karma that I'm, living in Raleigh. This is all my karma. So, but there is a bit of collective thought process. Yes.
I mean, if a plane crashes, then you've all shared. There's something in everyone on that
Yep.
plane's past that caused them to be on that plane that
Yep.
crashed.
And
Although
then
they're all
continue
separate.
that, and continue that thought. So there's a plane crash. Well, you know what? So that plane crash, the family of that person, that they had the karma to lose a loved one. So everything is karma. It will drive you nuts when you start really starting to look at this. But it's also, once you really start to get a little bit more understanding, the thing that I find about it is that it helps me with the taking away the victimization of things. For me, I find that very empowering.
Now, within this, is there also a concept of free will that I can choose, or I think I'm choosing to do
Yep.
things in a lifetime which may in fact set me way back.
So excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Who wants to take this one? Because this is good stuff.
So your past karma, like karma is your thinking. It's your mind. So your gross consciousness is karma. So I remember hearing that from one of the retreats. But so where you are now is a result of your past karma, and the way you think of everything in this room and the people around you and everything is a result of your past karma. So moving ahead is a choice. You're not stuck. Where you are now is a result of your past karma. Not even physical location, but your mind and how you perceive everything is a result of your past karma.
Does this make sense? Your free will. I'll go for it.
And so when you have one of these experiences that you're like, well, that was karma. It's like an abscessed tooth. Oh, it's karma. But you can rejoice in this abscessed tooth because now that whatever karmic seed was that caused that pain has been purified or has been spent. And so Geshe Sangpo and I were having tea, and he had a bad tooth prior. And so we had this long conversation about what a joyful experience it was to have this bad tooth or to have this bad experience, this painful experience, because now whatever karmic seed that was planted that caused that is now dealt with.
Yeah, it's ripened. So, do I have this on here? Okay, so we're talking about karma and kind of given this analogy of planting seeds. Okay, so imagine you have this garden, okay, and you're going to plant these seeds in your garden. Well, you're not going to plant weeds, right? You want to plant flowers, you want to plant food, you want to plant something beautiful. Okay, if I had an acorn, a little acorn, and I planted that acorn, okay, that's a karmic seed. Now, in order for that acorn to become an oak tree, what has to happen? It has to be watered, has to get sunlight. There's things that have to happen before that seed sprouts. Okay, so we'll talk about the seed, we'll talk about ripening. You'll hear all these terminologies. Okay, and that acorn it's not going to become a pear tree. It's not going to become, an evergreen. So it has that acorn. You could actually look at that and say that that's actually an oak tree. Okay, but things have to happen before that becomes an oak tree. So we talk about the ripening of the seeds. Now, karma, again, there's good things. Karma is not all negative. Karma is just, it just is. Okay, so things have to happen before that seed will ripen. And what Steve was talking about is that it's called taking suffering as a path. Okay, so again, this is about my mind. I've gone through some medical things. Now, if I didn't have this path to work with and kind of control my mind, I could really go down the self-pity, right? Well, what is that? I've got a negative mind and I'm all about the victimization. Oh, poor me. Negative, 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 right? So if I stayed in that, then I'm going to be, if I go back to one of the other slides, I'm going to be continuing that cycle, right? I'm causing the stuff that I am dealing with now is from the past. Well, I don't want to go through this again. So I want to really think about my actions, body, speech, and mind, so that I can try to make sure that the next mind holder is not going through these things. But things have to happen before that karmic seed is going to ripen. And you do have some options about making sure that the negative doesn't happen. You can do purification processes. And again, this is all about the mind. And when I say that, I talked to you guys about that, going to bed at night and trying to think through my day. What could I have done better? Those are different steps. That's an actual purification process. And you know what it does? It makes me feel better. And then when I get up the next day, I think about it a little bit more. It's all about raising your awareness of your mind. And so if you actually understand some of the stuff and start working with it, it's empowering to help you literally become a better person. So you have a choice of, what are you planting? Or what are you not only planting, but what are you maybe trying to weed out? When you're cultivating your garden, you're going and then you're working on your mind. Go ahead. No, you guys ask the questions. It's a lot easier for me to answer questions than just sit up here and talk. Especially when I've got great people in the room to help.
I'm trying to think how to phrase this. So I look back in my life and I don't feel that I've done terrible things, but now that I start looking at sort of the different aspects of karma, there's a whole lot of stuff I could have done better. A whole lot of stuff. So how do am I kind of stuck with this at that point and have to move forward, or what can I do about things that I've done that I now am aware of that I wasn't aware of or didn't care about?
So that's actually
in the past.
Really, really common. Think about this, okay? Because when you first dive into this stuff, people have a tendency to get depressed because they start noticing all of the ick, right? It's no different than today I'm going to go and I'm going to clean my house. And then all of a sudden you start noticing how really dirty your house is. And you start, pulling that sweater thread and it's like, oh boy, the baseboards you start seeing the mess. So number one, rejoice that you're actually seeing the mess, because until you admit that you've got a problem, there's nothing you're going to do about it. So you have to rejoice that you are actually seeing the mess, because now you're going to be able to, you're dead on with the Four Noble Truths. The number one, admit you're sick, right? That's exactly where that is. Admit it, see it. Do not ever beat yourself up on this stuff, people. We have to have self-compassion. I'm not talking about self-pity, and I'm not talking about the oh, poor me and all of these things, but compassion for yourself. We're really good about being compassionate for other people, aren't we? Every single one in this room. Every single person in this room. If somebody needed something and you had the ability to help, you'd do it. You wouldn't be sitting in a Buddhist center if you didn't have that thought, right? Do you ever cut yourself the same slack? This is huge. There's a beautiful meditation that I'll tell you about another time that really brings that awareness of we don't cut ourselves that same slack that we would for other people. That's self-compassion, not pity. But that's a huge concept that we don't, especially in this Western culture, that we just don't do. So don't beat yourself up. You're recognizing it. You're in a wonderful place because, aha! Did I ever told you guys about Miss Bodhicitta yet? Okay, I'm going to tell you. This is all about me. To give you the examples that this is stuff that we live every day. I have taken these classes. I've taken all of the classes. I've been coming here for a long time. I think I've done 2 rounds of Discovering Buddhism. And there's a class in one of the modules in Discovering Buddhism is Bodhicitta. The whole thing is just, like I said, you got 7 weeks where you're just doing that one class. So at the end of this class, you can take the test. I think I talked to you about that. And I was the only one in the class that took the test. So I was feeling just a little bit of pride there. Negative, but I was there. And I aced it. And the teacher, Venerable Tendrin, who's teaching down in Florida, she's phenomenal. We even talked about it. You know, she's really good. That was awesome. I went home that night and got into a conversation with my husband, and he was telling me about some party that we had to go to and who the people that were going to be at this party. And there was a lady that I was not particularly, I found her challenging. And I'm talking about going to this party, and I'm not really happy about having to go to this party. And all of a sudden, as I'm hearing what's coming out of my mouth, and I burst into tears. And I thought, Miss Bodhicitta, you just got done taking this beautiful class on love and compassion. You aced the test, and the first thing out of your mouth is you don't want to go to a party because this lady that's going to be there. I mean, really? That was that huge. I still, to this day, that happened like 5 years ago, long time ago. But I keep that in my head because that is exactly what that is. I have a long way to go. We think we know these things, we learn these things, and we still make these mistakes. So I pull that up all the time. So the fact that we're practicing, that's why they call it practicing Buddhism. That's the way I say it all the time. So, but it's this discussion of the mind and the ability that we have to change the mind. That's what Buddhism is all about. So how do we do it? We look at our minds, and we study, and we practice. And what do we study? We study the Lam Rim. So we've talked a little bit about the Lam Rim. And this is that stages of the path to enlightenment. This is the backbone of Tibetan Buddhism. All right? And it was arranged in such a way, so this includes all of the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, arranged in a way that the Hinayana and Mahayana teachings kind of come together. All right? And it was compiled by Lama Atisha in the 11th century, and everything that we do here is part of this Lam Rim. This is actually an outline of the Lam Rim, and I brought it just so you can see. This is just the outline. Okay? When we start studying the commentaries of this, that's when we get into those 4, books out there. There's whole commentaries on this. Everything in Tibetan Buddhism is part and parcel of the Lam Rim. And it is this graduated path. It's not gradual. It's not like you do this. It's graduated. So this is like a roadmap. Okay? We're gonna take a trip to Duluth, Minnesota. Well, you know what? What does that mean? I'm going to maybe cut through Ohio. I'm going to take the 401 over. This is a road map. Well, maybe, I want to take a side path and go to Sycamore, Illinois and visit my aunt and uncle over there. Okay, and then I'm going to go. This is a road map of how to become enlightened. And you can actually look at this outline if you guys are talking, because some people have been asking me about this. You can actually just read the outline of the Lam Rim, and it will start to give you a little bit of that big picture. as things start to come out. It's just, developing an interest and becoming convinced that this path might work for you. Talking about bodhicitta. How do you do the meditation sessions and how to rely on a spiritual mentor and what is a teacher? We're going to go through some of these things, but just reading this outline before you even go into the commentaries, you can find very helpful. But this is what we study. And again, this is a very scholarly practice, and I like that because it just makes sense. It's very logical to me.
Is that on the Kanaka Center website?
This is not. And this I actually got this particular one from one of the visiting teachers that came here. This is Thupten Chodron. Actually gave this. I'll check and see. Sometime I'm not going to pass this one out, but sometime it's easy enough to get hold of these things. And if you're interested and you're going to go to the Lamrim classes, then that's a good thing to study. But this is what we're studying. This is your roadmap. This is your syllabus. This is your outline. This is your course outline for your life. This is the original Buddhism for Dummies right here. So what does that mean to be Buddhist? That we look inside. Let's kind of move on. So the precious human rebirth, what are we talking about? We've kind of already talked about this a little bit. It's from a Buddhist standpoint, a human rebirth provides the ideal conditions for practicing and improving our minds. It's an ideal balance of leisure and suffering, opportunity and motivation. So what does that mean? So we have the opportunity, because we were reborn as humans, to work with our minds, okay? If we're reborn as your roach, as your dog, as your cat, we really don't have that opportunity. And actually some humans don't even have the opportunities that we have because they're not born in a peaceful country, or they're not born in a family that would help them to study and do things. You can be born a human and maybe have some physical ailment. So the odds of being born into this precious human rebirth that we have, that we're sitting here, I think the analogy that was given to me one time is imagine this great vast ocean. And in this great vast ocean, okay, picture the Atlantic or the Pacific or something. And then they call it, there's an old Buddhist story that does this, and they call it a yoke. Okay, I'm going to call it a life preserver. So we have this life preserver that's floating on the top of the ocean in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and I've got a sea turtle that's coming up from the depths to get a breath, and he puts his head right through that life preserver. What are the odds of that happening? That's the story, that's the analogy that they give, that's the odds that we had to be born in this position that we are. So you realize just how precious that is. And then you stop to think, okay, well, that doesn't seem, or you're trying to think your way through it. Well, there's how many people on the planet? 7 billion people on the planet? How many insects? Billions, quadrillions. Go through it. The animals, the insects. And we were born with this precious human rebirth. That's why they talk about this precious human life. You're going to hear this in all of your Buddhist readings, precious human life. Because we have the opportunity to be seekers, to be looking, to be practicing. And a lot don't. So that's why this is so very precious. You hear these words all the time. Make sense? Okay, so these are some of the, again, lists. We're into lists. The 8 leisures and freedoms that include the freedom from being born in other realms. You'll start learning about hell realms and animal realms and God realms. They talked a little bit on the previous slide about we have that mix of suffering and good. If things were perfect for us, we might not have any reason to study, right? Sometimes people come because they come to this because you are suffering, you're trying to figure things out. You're just not satisfied with some of the other spiritualities that you found, or some of the other studies. We're all here for a reason, okay? So if we had this perfect life, you may not wish to study, okay? So we're trying to work with this stuff. born at a time when a Buddha did not appear, in a place where there's no spiritual activity. The 10 endowments enriches this. These include being born human, being born in a religious country, being born with a well-functioning body and mind. We talk about being in a religious country. Well, look at some of the places where they're not allowed to practice whatever religion they choose to. Okay, here we're allowed to have all of these expanses, all of these opportunities. Being born at a time when a Buddha did appear and is taught. So these are, again, lists for list's sake, but this makes you start to think about, what did your previous mind holder do to allow you to be here, and what are you going to do about that? So let's go on to the Buddhist view of death. How many people in this room have ever seen a dead body? Really? That's huge. Normally I have one or two hands. Was it in the hospital or at home? Hospital? Home? Okay. That actually makes me happy. In our Western culture, we don't talk about death and dying. We don't. We avoid it. Okay, we don't even talk about growing old in I think, a positive manner here, and everything is kind of geared, even our marketing is geared toward the young and the beautiful, and we just tend to avoid it. In our Western culture, we tend to put our elders away. They don't live with us, and I'm not talking about those that, medically need help, but we just in our Western culture, we don't do the same things that I think a lot of other countries do so phenomenally well, and that's keeping the families together and keeping your elders, at home for longer periods of time. I think it's more challenging for a lot here, but it's just not our culture. I think we have this tendency to fear the unknown. We fear death because we don't talk about it. We're not familiar with it. We don't see it. Would you guys agree with that? So we fear it. In Buddhism, we actually have death meditations. This is where we'll start talking about some of that, the Tibetan book. We actually have death meditation. I do this meditation. The Dalai Lama does it 6 times a day. We have the belief that you can not only not fear it, but that if you really work with enough, you can work with your mind to help set up that next birth a little bit more. Some of the great meditators are said to be able to do this. I actually had a friend who passed away not that long ago, and he was a great practitioner. And it, as sad as it is to lose people, it was very inspiring for me to actually watch somebody go through this in a Buddhist manner and be working with their mind. But we actually have the death meditations. Again, Robbie Watkins in his Mind and Potential, the very first DB class, he's a doctor, but he will actually walk you through this. That's the first time that I did it, was in that class many years ago. And he'll actually dim the lights a little bit. You can lay down, you can sit, and he will actually walk you through this death meditation, very carefully. You're not actually going to die, okay? You really won't, I promise. But if you do get nervous and scared, get up and, walk out, have a glass of water while the class is going on. But I will do this death meditation because I have faced death several times because of my cancer history, because of a few other things. And it's very calming and peaceful. And so, because we are all going to die, right? There isn't a single person in this room. There's not a single person on this planet that is going to get out of here alive. So we are going to die. It's fact. Why we avoid thinking about it is really crazy. When, if you actually sit and think about it, but people say it's depressing. And you know what? It's not. If we could do this well, and if we weren't afraid of it, then I think we'd all do better when the people that we love pass. When we are passing, to take care of the people that we care about who are going to be left behind. If we actually talked about it, thought about it. But there's an actual death meditation that we do. This brings another practice up that I like to do. So here's your homework. All right? Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, as soon as you can remember, I want you to think to yourself, I'm going to die at 5 p.m. As soon as you wake up and as soon as you can remember, Sandy said, oh, that's right, I'm going to die today at 5 p.m. Okay? I want you to think about it. How will you act if you knew you were going to die? Now, you still have to go to work. You still have to live your normal life. You cannot just take off and go on vacation. You cannot just run to the beach. You cannot stay home. Okay? You still have to function in your world, right? Won't that coffee taste a little bit better if you thought this is your last morning coffee? Won't you maybe be a little bit nicer person as you're going through your day? Because you know what? This could be your last time. Maybe you cut some people some slack because it's just, how will your mind work? I promise you will not die at 5 p.m. I've never lost a student yet. Okay? But I want you to really have this awareness tomorrow. So as soon as you can, when you wake up, I think, Steve, you talked about.
Yeah, so.
He took this class how many years ago from me?
It's been a while. And so it's suggested that maybe write a note to yourself on a sticky note and put it on your bathroom mirror. So when you go into whatever you do first when you get up in the morning, you know, because you're going to forget it, you're going to remember it at noon. So write it on a sticky note, put it on your mirror. So that when you walk in the bathroom, turn on the light, you're reminded first thing you're going to die today. It's an amazing experience. It's a very moving, thought-provoking experience.
So just try it. Just try it tomorrow, okay? And then go through your day. Be aware of how your mind is tomorrow with this thought. All right? Is that grass going to look a little greener? Is the sky going to look a little bluer? Are you going to be a little nicer? Just think about it. Again, you have to go through this daily life, so don't stay home from work. Okay, now 5 o'clock rolls around, and you don't die. And I want you to stop and think at that point. Try to set an alarm so that at 5 o'clock, that alarm goes off, and then have the thought, wow, I didn't die. I have another opportunity to work on this. I have another chance, and I'm going to do better. Rejoice in the fact that you didn't die. Okay? Now, this can actually be a practice that people do quite often. I love this practice. But just try it as an experiment and just think about it. Every morning when you wake up, there are a lot of the Sangha and stuff that have a regular practice about, I woke up. A lot of people didn't wake up today. But just tomorrow, you're going to die at 5 o'clock, so that's your homework. All right? Could be fun.
It's also helpful to think about doing that meditation in a graveyard. I mean, really, just go park, get out of your car, and go sit under a tree in a graveyard and do that meditation because you're around the results of what you're pondering.
Yeah, it's just do the things that will make that real to you, because the more real that you can make it, and the more honestly, again, nobody else is in your mind. It is just you. Nobody else around you is going to know unless you tell them. But just be as honest with yourself and try to work with it. What time is it? So again, let's go. I'm going to start working forward a little bit more. The Lamrim that we've talked about, our roadmap, really has what they call the 3 scopes. The lower scope, the middle scope, and the greater scope. You're going to hear these things. The lower scope is focused on a fortunate rebirth. You have people that just stay there. They're very happy with just working there. And they're okay with it, and that's just fine. The middle scope is focused on liberation from suffering. And then the greater scope is focused on full enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. So it's kind of like I'm just going to start to try to familiarize you with some of these words and concepts that you're going to hear. You can actually work on these different scopes at the same time. Okay? You can't save somebody else unless you first learn how to swim, right? So it's that same type of concept. So this is why they call it the graduated path and not the gradual path, because you can work on other things. And then once you start discovering what's kind of working for you, some people just focus in on some things. And that's okay too. So we're going to go over here to this truth of the path. We're going to talk about the three principal aspects of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of emptiness. Renunciation, okay, that is having these aha moments of, you have a better idea of your mind, and it's the state of mind that doesn't have the slightest attraction to samsaric pleasures for even a second, and having the strong wish for liberation. So let's talk about this. This does not mean you're giving up all your possessions. Renunciation, in the West, we tend to think, oh, I've got to give everything up, and I've got to give all my money away. I've got to live in a tiny house, and I've just got to give it all up. That is not what renunciation means. Can you go down that path too? Of course you can. Okay? But renunciation is a state of mind. And it's focused on letting go of the attachment that you have for certain things. So what's attachment? Attachment is a disturbing thought that exaggerates the positive qualities of an object and wishes to possess it. Attachment has all of the I involved in it. Attachment is all about the I. So you know how you, what are some good analogies for attachment? I think we talked about this already a while ago. It's that where we kind of exaggerate. You have a crush on somebody, you fall in love with somebody, and you think that, oh, you just love that person and they're so handsome. And the more that you get to know them, maybe they're not quite as handsome. And the guys probably have the same thing. They think this woman is beautiful. And the more you get to know somebody, not quite so much. That's all part of the attachment that comes into it when you start to actually really understand and figure out what you like. Or we kind of make up these larger exaggerated qualities of things. Kind of there. I love that blank look that I get sometimes. I'm starting to watch the time, because what I'm trying to figure out is if we want to continue talking about some of these terminologies and the things that we're doing, or if you want to try the analytical meditation. So I'm going to take a vote right now, because here's where I'd either kind of keep going with some of these definitions so that we can kind of keep working on this, or if you want to try an analytical meditation. So those who would like to just keep working on this, raise your hand. Those who want to go try an analytical meditation. Okay, so we're going to keep working on this.
No, we will do that meditation
next time. I'll try to do it next time. We'll leave some time in class. It's just everybody's a little bit different, so it's just trying to figure out what we're doing. So let's keep going down this path. Bodhicitta. Okay, bodhicitta, a principal consciousness that combines the two factors of wishing to free all beings from suffering and wishing to attain enlightenment because of that. That again is, I want to become enlightened and I want to help everybody. I'm not truly going to be happy unless everybody's happy. So this is that feeling of, how could you just be happy if you know that people were suffering? Right? So this is kind of that bodhicitta mind, and that selfless. Bodhicitta is very selfless. Doesn't even think about helping. You just do it. Okay? Moms, they have these stories of moms and dads that go to save their children. And that automatic, they can lift a car, those type of stories. That's kind of that bodhicitta, selfless. They just do it. You don't even think about it. You just want to help others. You don't even think about what that means. Okay? So you're not thinking about it. So that bodhicitta is that selfless love. Okay? That's number 2 on the truth of the path. You ever think about, so one of the meditations, one of the practices that when you're really feeling bad, you've got a bad cold, okay? You've got these, whatever aches, ailments, cancer, I don't care what it is. Okay, if you stop and you think about all of the suffering that's out there, and you think about others besides yourself, you tend to have less self-pity. Okay? Because even though you may have whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever cold or cancer or something, there's always somebody out there that has it worse, isn't there? Always you can think about this. So it's kind of that selfless. You start to think about others before yourself a little bit more. But don't forget, you have to learn how to swim before you can truly help others. And you have to have a little bit of wisdom on that. Engaging bodhicitta, the altruistic mind of enlightenment that actively engages in the 6 perfections and the 4 means of drawing sentient beings to the Dharma after the bodhisattva vows have been taken. These are all definitions and stuff. Again, part of what I'm trying to do is just expose you to this terminology. Because if you choose to move forward, you're going to need to understand some of these things. Okay, so what are the 6 perfections? You're going to hear these. Again, lists for lists. The 6 perfections: generosity, morality, patience, joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. Generosity, let's just go through some of these things. Generosity from a Buddhist perspective is being able to give without regret. You have to have some wisdom. You have to have some middle way about all of this. Okay? We all want to give all the time. But you know what? What if we give up so much of our money that we can't pay our bills? That wouldn't be very wise of us. Okay? So you have to be thinking about some of these things. Morality, we're talking about secular ethics. Okay? Patience, that is my big one. We've talked about that a lot here. It's a huge one. Joyful effort. What does joyful effort mean? Geshe Gelik is probably one of the best examples of joyful effort. He has been teaching here for 15 years, and he's been teaching the same subjects and the same things because we have so many different people coming through here and so many new people going through here. And so that patience and that joyful effort, he never, I never once have ever gotten from him that don't y'all get this yet? I don't ever get that joyful effort of continuing and again, taking that I out of it, that you are just going to give. So joyful effort, enjoying your work, enjoying what you do. Concentration, okay, so that ability to focus is one of the 6 perfections. And that's one of the practices that we do with this concentration meditation, to be able to work with our mind. So concentration is huge. And wisdom. We're going to talk about wisdom and seeing things as they really are. That is a huge part. We're going to discuss that. That's going to be the big subject of the next class. So we've just got to take the wisdom of emptiness, but then also look at the wisdom of being able to look at things properly. And a lot of that middle way, don't take things to extremes. So some of these questions that we've talked about, seeing our minds for as, messed up as they are, just having some of this wisdom too. How do we act with this? The 4 means: giving, speaking kind words, teaching to the level of the student. If I came in here and started talking about some of this high-level Tantra and some of these other high-level concepts, that would be totally the wrong thing to do. So it's teaching to the level of the student. And again, this is where Geshe is so good, because he, with just a few minutes, will know exactly where you're at, will know exactly where each of you is at. He's one of the really phenomenal guides for this. And practicing. So if I came in here and I talked about this stuff and I didn't actually do it, that's not too cool. So these are kind of our, what are we trying to do with all of this from our point of view? Okay, so practicing what one teaches. These are, some of these we talked about already. Compassion, the sincere wish that others be free from suffering and its causes. Okay, that's that compassion. And love, the sincere wish that others have happiness and its causes. So, did we ever really define happiness? A little bit? Did we talk about that much? What is happiness? What is happiness? I think we mistake pleasure for happiness a little bit too much. This is part of what, is a good conversation. Happiness, getting what you don't want and wanting what you don't have is kind of the problem that we seem to have with a lot of things. Happiness is that, you don't have a lot, but you have enough. So some of these different terminologies, if happiness was out there, if happiness was that new car, then that would be a permanent thing. We tend to think of happiness as a little bit more permanent because happiness is so transient for us, right? We're happy today, not happy tomorrow. Part of that thing that we're working with our minds, right? If happiness was that new car, well, how long does that happiness last? A couple days. The first time that thing gets a nick, you're not happy. Okay? So if happiness was out there, if happiness was chocolate cake, because, we always say that, I want a piece of chocolate cake. If that chocolate cake was happiness, then it would always mean happiness, right? That would be the if that chocolate cake was truly happiness. Well, what about the people that are allergic to chocolate? Or what about, that first piece made me really happy, and maybe even the second piece made me pretty happy too. But about the third or the fourth piece, I'm not so happy with that chocolate cake. And if I eat a 10th piece, well, I'm going to throw up. So that chocolate cake changes, and it's not necessarily happy. That happiness is not in that chocolate cake because it changes. So I think we tend to think that happiness and pleasure are a little bit interchangeable with some of these things. That kind of makes sense?
I just wanted to add something that I heard Venerable Tendrin say one time she was teaching, and she asked the room what was happiness, and they passed the mic around, and everyone defined what made them happy, but no one really said what happiness was, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So
Did they come up with a
No,
term?
it didn't come up. Everyone just said, this is what makes me happy, this is what makes me happy. But what is happiness?
So that is, I think I've been in that class where she's done that. So we do talk about happiness. So let's do the flip. What would happiness be to us? So for me, freedom from suffering. If we didn't have those three sufferings, that dukkha, pain, change, pervade, I think I'd be pretty happy without those things. Okay? If I had freedom from suffering, I think we come into that one. If we have that contentment, what are the things? Again, we all tend to talk about things that make us happy that are all out there, which is part of what we're trying to talk about here. We're looking inward. Venerable Tendrin is one of the nuns here at Kadampa Center. She's actually teaching down in Florida right now. One of she's had to leave, so she's actually teaching the 2-year Discovering Buddhism. And hopefully she'll be back in a year and a half. So love, the sincere wish that others have happiness and its causes. Loving kindness, the wish for others to have happiness and its causes. Slight difference there, okay? But you're going to hear about loving kindness a lot. Okay, equanimity. How much time do I have? Equanimity. I'm going to get into your cockroach thing here. The absence of the usual discrimination of sentient beings deriving from the realization that all beings are equal in wanting happiness and freedom from suffering. Okay, let's synopsize that statement here. Equanimity. This is a big word in Buddhism. You're going to hear about this. So it's that being able to, we tend to kind of rank things. She had sentient being is mind bearer. A sentient being is mind bearer. Okay? To be a sentient being, it is the ability to move, the ability to take action. So when you really get down to this, okay, we are talking animals, we're talking insects, we're talking microbials. Okay, as science is expanding and going deeper and deeper, they're discovering that some plants have the ability to move away from heat or fire, to be going toward the sun. So they're actually taking movement. They're moving. So here's where we start to get into some of this. Well, what does that mean to us as Buddhists? Okay, so sentient beings. That includes cockroaches, that includes mosquitoes, that includes scorpions, it includes every, disgusting bug you can think of. So to be able to have that equanimity to look at that cockroach and not have that hate reaction or that awful reaction, to be able to just level this out. So let's make it simpler. Let's make it simpler. People. We all have people that we like a lot, and we have some people that we might not like as much. I don't know that I don't think there's people I could say I hate. That's a really strong word. But we have people that we prefer over others, right? So we treat them better than we do other people, right? So to be able to have equanimity a little bit, and I'm not saying to bring the people that you love down, but what if we try to bring the people that we don't care for as much up? So if we could treat everybody with a little bit more equanimity, wouldn't that be nicer? That goes back to now you're going to die tomorrow. Be a little nicer to those people, even the ones that you don't care for as much. Equanimity. Okay? So we're talking about all these practices that we're trying to do, and we're talking about the triggers and the patient in lines and the, when you're driving and all of these things. Part of what I'm talking about here, and why I talk about these practices on just these silly little things, is that how do we think we are ever going to handle the big things that happen in our lives if we can't even manage that grocery line? Okay? So use those little things as practice so that when the bigger things happen, you're able to mentally, mindfully, more aware of your mind as the big things are going on. So this is why it's great to be able to practice these things when we don't have the bad things going on. Does that make sense? How much time? We're going to talk about labels and boxes next time because that's going to help us with some of the emptiness. Anybody have any questions? We're gonna do another meditation here, a short one, but I can't believe time is up already. Questions? Any of them? Yes, sir.
Realms. So the animal is understandable. The God's realm and the hell's realm. The existing in those, is it permanent or temporary?
Well, everything is temporary, okay? Because I think that this is a little bit one of the differences, again, for the Christianity type of thing, that once you go to hell, you are there. Okay, you go to heaven, you're there. They kind of have this, that's it, right? I think so. I don't know that as well. Okay, in Buddhism, we have these different realms, and they're not permanent because nothing is permanent. So you could be, when that karma ripens, so right now if you were in a hell realm or a God realm, some of these other things you've been reading about, they're not permanent. Okay, once your karma is ripened and that seed is over that next life. So the God realms, for instance, there are some. This is going to be kind of, I'm a little bit in the deep end of the pool here. Okay, so there are different realms that you could say that there's one that you're going to be there for 1,000 years, right? And so on that just like at 5 p.m. tomorrow, well, there's actually a realm that they say is that long, and so you're going to live that, and when that's done, you're moving on. So nothing, you don't stay in those realms, is not permanent. Okay?
But you could come back.
Come back?
Go back into those realms.
Oh, yeah, I think we've all been in and out of all these different places. Like I said, eons and eons and eons. So, and who's to say that it's only this planet? Who's to say it's only this? Go ahead.
Well, since you said that,
You have 2 minutes.
is rebirth necessarily what we consider to be chronological? In other words, could you reborn in what we would consider to be the past?
No, I don't think so. No. So Brian's answer is it's not linear. Yeah, so the three directions, okay, past, present, future, and then it will get into this, yeah, what's a good way? Dimensional. So not truly the past, but you have to broaden that thinking a little bit more, because when you're this past, present, future, which we do talk about, past, present, future, the 3 times, okay, but now it's, you got to go kind of in this dimensional thinking, not with time.
Okay.
So it's a hard concept that I think, we've got to be a little careful with that one at this level.
Okay.
More to come. But it's not quite this, somewhat a little bit, but there is a lot more. But that you can't, you will have an awareness. If you become a Buddha, you will have an awareness of this entire stream. Okay, but you're not going to bounce back in time.
Okay.
I would like those movies, though.
Okay.
Any other questions? I love that you guys are asking the questions. Did I talk a little bit about the Buddhist view of death a little bit to answer? That Tibetan Book of the Dead is a really interesting book. Robert Thurman was here, and he has a really good commentary on that book, too. Robert Thurman is a Western professor, very advanced, and he's been here a couple of times, and he's got a really good book, a really good commentary on that book that I've read. We only have one class left, people. Y'all made it. One more, The Wisdom of Emptiness, and that's one of my favorite classes. We will have visual aids on that one. So I always promise to try to start and stop on time, and we actually do not have time for a meditation. So let's do this. Let's do a dedication. Okay, so just take a deep breath and dedicate these efforts that you have. I mean, for 4 weeks you have come here and you have listened to me babble. Okay, and you have taken the time and the effort to come and learn a little bit more. Dedicate these efforts to the benefit not only for yourself, but honestly, you're going to go through this, and you can be a kinder and wiser person for others just by you going through this. It's that ripple effect. So dedicate these efforts. Try to remember, put that sticky note that tomorrow you die at 5 p.m. The next class, we're going to talk about that, so I really hope that you give it a shot. It's always interesting if you truly just try to make the effort for yourself. Nobody else is watching. This isn't a test. Just give it a shot for yourself, because it has the opportunity to really change your mind when you start to work with this. So give it a real try tomorrow and see what happens. And I hope you all have a very good evening, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week, and that will be our last class. So thank you all for coming. Thank you.